Elliot DeLuca, a charismatic billionaire, was shattered when his fiancée, Sabrina, left him for a wealthier rival. Fueled by anger, he devised the ultimate revenge, marrying Marjorie, a humble gardener, to shock Sabrina and their elite circle. Marjorie, with her plain looks and unassuming nature, seemed like the perfect pawn. But as Elliot's plan unfolded, Marjorie's resilience, wisdom, and kindness began to shine through, challenging his preconceived notions. On their wedding night, an unexpected revelation changed everything, leaving Elliot questioning his motives and values. As the line between pretense and reality blurred, Elliot discovered that true wealth isn't measured by status or revenge, but by the strength of character and the courage to embrace genuine connections. Elliot DeLuca, a charismatic billionaire known for his flair and charm, was no stranger to the world of wealth and influence. But behind the glitz and glamour of his luxurious lifestyle, Elliot nursed a broken heart. His ex-fiancée, Sabrina, had walked out on him just 6 months earlier, claiming she deserved someone who truly matched her ambitions. To Elliot, it wasn't about ambition, it was about money. Sabrina wanted more than he was willing to give, and her departure left him simmering with anger and a thirst for revenge. When Elliot learned Sabrina had begun dating one of his rivals, he decided to make a bold statement. If Sabrina thought he was beneath her, he'd show her the ultimate humiliation. Fueled by anger and pride, Elliot concocted a plan. He would marry someone so far removed from Sabrina's idea of sophistication that it would send shockwaves through their social circles. Enter Marjorie, a middle-aged gardener who worked at one of Elliot's countryside estates. Marjorie was as unassuming as they came, short, plain, and always dressed in oversized clothes, stained from a hard day's work. Her weathered face and calloused hands spoke of years of toil, and she had a quiet, unpretentious demeanor that made her invisible to most of the estate's visitors. But to Elliot, she was perfect for his scheme. One sunny afternoon, Elliot approached Marjorie as she was tending to the roses. She looked up at him, squinting in the sunlight, confused as to why her employer would bother with someone like her. "Marjorie," Elliot began smoothly, "I have a proposition for you." She tilted her head, wary. "What kind of proposition?" "A marriage. Temporary, of course. You'll be compensated handsomely for your time." Marjorie stared at him, incredulous. "Marriage? To you?" "Yes. Think of it as a business arrangement. You'll attend public events with me, live in my mansion, and play the part of my wife. In return, I'll pay off your debts, give you a sizable sum of money, and ensure you're comfortable for the rest of your life." Marjorie hesitated. It sounded too good to be true, and yet the offer was tempting. She had spent her entire life struggling to make ends meet, and the thought of financial security was irresistible. "All right," she finally agreed, "but only if we're honest about what this is. I don't want to be part of any lies." Elliot smirked. "Don't worry. This is all for show." The wedding was hastily arranged. Elliot spared no expense, ensuring the ceremony was an extravagant affair attended by the elite. Sabrina was, of course, on the guest list. When she arrived and saw Marjorie standing at the altar in a simple white gown, her jaw dropped. Elliot reveled in her shock, enjoying every second of her barely concealed outrage. The vows were exchanged, and Marjorie, despite her nerves, played her part flawlessly. Elliot's friends whispered among themselves, unable to understand why he had chosen someone so plain and unremarkable. Sabrina, on the other hand, seethed with jealousy. But the true turning point came on the wedding night. As they retired to their suite, Marjorie was noticeably quiet. Elliot, still basking in the success of his plan, barely noticed her unease. "Well," he said, pouring himself a glass of champagne, "we did it." The look on Sabrina's face was priceless. Marjorie sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Elliot, can I ask you something?" "Of course," he replied, not looking up. "Why did you really choose me? I mean, out of everyone you could have picked. Elliot hesitated, caught off guard by her directness. You were different. I wanted someone who wouldn't blend into the crowd, someone who would make a statement. Marjorie nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. And what happens now? Now, we enjoy the fruits of our arrangement. I'll make sure you have everything you need, and you just have to be my wife in public. Simple as that. But it wasn't simple for Marjorie. As the days turned into weeks, she found herself thrust into a world she barely understood. Lavish parties, expensive clothes, and endless scrutiny became her new reality. And while Elliot seemed to thrive in the spotlight, Marjorie felt increasingly out of place. Yet, beneath her quiet exterior, Marjorie was far from ordinary. She possessed a wisdom and resilience born from years of hardship, qualities that began to shine through in unexpected ways. At one particular gala, when a group of socialites made snide comments about her appearance, Marjorie calmly disarmed them with her wit and grace, leaving them speechless. Elliot, watching from across the room, felt a pang of admiration he hadn't anticipated. As the weeks went by, Elliot began to see Marjorie in a new light. She was kind, selfless, and had an uncanny ability to connect with people. Despite her humble beginnings, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that put even the most polished elites to shame. Meanwhile, Sabrina couldn't stand seeing Elliot and Marjorie together. Convinced that Marjorie was hiding something, she hired a private investigator to dig into her past. But when the investigator returned empty-handed, Sabrina's frustration only grew. One evening, as Marjorie and Elliot sat together on the terrace, she turned to him and said, "Elliot, I think it's time we end this arrangement." He frowned. "Why? It's working perfectly." "For you, maybe," she replied. "But I'm not cut out for this life. And I think you're starting to see that too." Elliot didn't respond immediately. For the first time, he realized how much he had come to rely on Marjorie, not just as part of his plan, but as a confidant and friend. "Marjorie," he said softly, "you've done more for me than I ever could have imagined. I don't want you to leave." She smiled sadly. "Elliot, you don't need me anymore. And I think it's time you let go of the past." The words hit him like a ton of bricks. Marjorie was right. His obsession with revenge had blinded him to what truly mattered. In the days that followed, Elliot made some drastic changes. He publicly apologized to Marjorie for dragging her into his scheme and announced their mutual decision to part ways. To his surprise, the public responded with overwhelming support for Marjorie, praising her grace and authenticity. As for Sabrina, she was left reeling. Elliot's transformation and newfound humility only highlighted her own superficiality, leaving her to reflect on the choices she had made. Marjorie returned to her quiet life, but with newfound confidence and financial stability, thanks to Elliot's generosity. And while their marriage may have been unconventional, it left a lasting impact on both their lives. Elliot, now free from the chains of resentment, focused on building a legacy that went beyond wealth and power. And though their paths diverged, he and Marjorie remained friends, bound by the unique journey they had shared. In the end, the millionaire and the gardener proved that even the most unlikely alliances could lead to personal growth and unexpected happiness.